The sun beat down relentlessly on the scorching sands of the Arabian desert as a formation of 8 sleek silver aircraft hugged the rugged terrain. It was June in the year 1981, and the tension in the cockpit was palpable. These were the cutting-edge General Dynamics F-16 Fighting Falcons, bearing the Blue Star of David on their wings. Their mission was one of the most audacious in military history, requiring absolute silence and precision. They flew dangerously low to avoid the prying eyes of enemy radar networks scanning the horizon. The pilots were focused, their hands gripping the controls with determination as they approached a target that could change the future of the Middle East forever. Deep inside Iraqi territory, the Osirak nuclear reactor loomed as a concrete giant threatening the stability of the entire region. Intelligence reports suggested that the facility was on the brink of producing weapons-grade plutonium, a prospect that terrified neighboring nations. The stakes could not have been higher for the pilots of the Israeli Air Force, who knew that failure was not an option. If they were detected before reaching the target, they would face a wall of anti-aircraft fire and surface-to-air missiles. The survival of their homeland depended on their ability to strike hard and vanish before the enemy could react. Colonel Ilan Ramon, the youngest pilot in the formation, checked his instruments one last time as the reactor dome came into view. The desert floor blurred beneath them at nearly 600 knots as the fighters popped up from their low-altitude approach. This maneuver was designed to confuse the tracking systems of the defenses below just long enough to deliver their payload. In mere seconds, the sky erupted with the roar of afterburners and the screech of falling munitions. The F-16 had never been tested in such a high-stakes deep strike mission before, and the world was about to witness the dawn of a new era in aerial warfare. Explosions ripped through the reinforced concrete of the reactor dome, sending plumes of smoke and debris high into the clear blue sky. The precision of the strike was absolute, and the reactor core was obliterated in a matter of moments. As the pilots turned their nimble jets back toward the west, they braced for the inevitable retaliation, but the shock of the attack had left the defenders paralyzed. The F-16 sped home untouched, having proven that a small single-engine fighter could deliver a strategic knockout blow, usually reserved for heavy bombers. The operation was a resounding success, and the legend of the Fighting Falcon was born. To understand how this compact fighter jet came to dominate the skies, we must look back to the turbulent years of the Vietnam War. The United States Air Force had entered that conflict with the belief that the age of the dogfight was over and that long-range missiles were the future. Heavy twin-engine fighters like the F-4 Phantom were designed as interceptors meant to engage enemies from a distance. However, the skies over Southeast Asia proved this theory disastrously wrong. Nimble Soviet-built MiG fighters lured the heavy American jets into turning battles where the Phantoms struggled to bring their weapons to bear. The losses in Vietnam sent shockwaves through the Pentagon and sparked a fierce debate about the future of combat aviation. Pilots returned with harrowing stories of trying to maneuver heavy aircraft against agile opponents while their complex missiles failed to track. It became clear that the Air Force had lost sight of the fundamental principles of air combat. The establishment favored larger, more expensive aircraft loaded with sophisticated gadgets, but a small group of rebels within the system began to argue for something radically different. They believed that raw performance and agility were the keys to survival. At the center of this rebellion was a brilliant and abrasive officer named John Boyd, who would come to be known as the father of the F-16. Boyd was a fighter pilot and a mathematician who developed the energy maneuverability theory, a scientific approach to analyzing aircraft performance. He argued that a fighter plane did not need to be the fastest or the heaviest, but it had to transition between energy states quicker than its opponent. His charts and graphs proved that the bloated fighters of the day were at a distinct disadvantage against smaller, lighter adversaries. Boyd and his followers were derisively called the Fighter Mafia. The Fighter Mafia waged a bureaucratic war within the halls of the Pentagon, fighting against generals who wanted bigger and more expensive toys. They proposed a concept called the Lightweight Fighter Program, which aimed to build a stripped-down hot rod of the skies. This aircraft would prioritize thrust-to-weight ratio and turn rate over range and heavy radar equipment. It was a radical departure from the prevailing philosophy of the time and faced immense resistance from the brass. However, the undeniable data presented by Boyd and the budget constraints of the post-Vietnam era eventually forced the Air Force to give the concept a chance. In 1972, the Air Force issued a request for proposals for a new lightweight fighter that could outturn and out-accelerate anything in the sky. General Dynamics and Northrop were the two companies selected to build prototypes for a fly-off competition. General Dynamics produced the F-16, a sleek single-engine jet that looked like nothing else on the tarmac. It featured a blended wing-body design where the fuselage and wings merged smoothly to create additional lift. This organic shape gave the aircraft a futuristic appearance and contributed significantly to its incredible aerodynamics. The F-16 was not just a triumph of aerodynamics, but also a pioneer of digital technology that would change aviation forever. It was the first aircraft to use a fly-by-wire control system where the pilot inputs were processed by a computer before moving the control surfaces. This allowed the jet to be aerodynamically unstable, which meant it wanted to turn naturally rather than fly straight. The computer made thousands of micro adjustments every second to keep the plane stable, giving it an agility that no human pilot could manage in a traditional aircraft. It was a machine that was inherently ready to maneuver. Another revolutionary feature designed for the pilot was the bubble canopy, which offered unparalleled visibility. Unlike previous fighters where the pilot sat low in the cockpit with obstructed views, the F-16 pilot sat high under a single piece of polycarbonate. This gave them a 360-degree view of the battlefield, a critical advantage in a dogfight. Furthermore, the seat was reclined 30 degrees back to help the pilot sustain high G-forces. This seemingly small adjustment allowed pilots to remain conscious and effective while pulling turns that would cause others to black out. The competition between the General Dynamics F-16 and the Northrop F-17 was fierce, but the performance of the General Dynamics jet was undeniable. It accelerated faster, turned tighter, and offered better visibility than its rival. In January 1975, the Air Force announced the F-16 as the winner of the Air Combat Fighter competition. The Fighter Mafia had won their battle, and the result was a machine that defied the conventions of the military-industrial complex. It was small, cheap to produce, and incredibly deadly. The Fighting Falcon was ready to enter mass production. The timing of the F-16's arrival coincided with a need for NATO nations to modernize their air forces in the face of the Soviet threat. Belgium, Denmark, the Netherlands, and Norway were looking for a replacement for their aging F-104 starfighters, and they joined the program in a historic multinational deal. This partnership ensured that the F-16 would not just be an American asset, but the backbone of Western air defense. Production lines were set up in Europe, and the aircraft became a symbol of transatlantic cooperation during the height of the Cold War. As the first production models rolled off the assembly lines, pilots were eager to get their hands on the Viper, as they affectionately called it. The name Viper came from the science fiction series Battlestar Galactica and stuck because of the jet's snake-like appearance and deadly strike capability. It handled like a dream, responding instantly to the slightest touch of the stick. The side-mounted control stick was another innovation that took getting used to, but soon pilots found it intuitive and precise, allowing for minute adjustments during high G maneuvers. While designed as a pure air superiority day fighter, the F-16 quickly proved it had the potential to be much more. Its powerful engine and strong airframe meant it could carry a significant load of bombs and missiles. Engineers realized that with the right avionics upgrades, the Viper could evolve into a true multi-role aircraft capable of ground attack missions as well as dogfighting. This versatility would become its defining characteristic, allowing air forces to use a single airframe for a wide variety of mission profiles, saving billions in logistics and training. The first real test of the F-16 in combat did not come from the United States or NATO, but from the Israeli Air Force. Israel had received its first batch of jets in 1980 and wasted no time integrating them into their squadrons. The pilots pushed the aircraft to its limits, discovering capabilities that even the designers had not fully anticipated. In April 1981, an Israeli F-16 scored the first air-to-air kill in the history of the type, shooting down a Syrian Mi-8 helicopter over Lebanon. It was a sign of things to come. Following the daring raid on the Osirak reactor, the F-16 would see major combat again in the skies over Lebanon during the 1982 war. In a series of massive air battles known as the Bekaa Valley Turkey Shoot, Israeli F-15s and F-16s decimated the Syrian Air Force. The Vipers danced through the sky, outmaneuvering the Soviet-built MiG-21s and MiG-23s with ease. The combination of the F-16's agility and the situational awareness provided by the bubble canopy proved overwhelming for the Syrian pilots. By the end of the conflict, the F-16 had racked up a staggering number of kills with 0 losses. These early victories cemented the reputation of the F-16 as the premier dogfighter of its generation. Air forces around the world took notice, and orders for the jet flooded in. Pakistan, Turkey, Egypt, and South Korea were among the nations that sought to add the Fighting Falcon to their arsenals. The aircraft became a global commodity, serving as a political tool as much as a military one. The United States used sales of the F-16 to strengthen alliances and maintain a balance of power in volatile regions. Back in Europe, the Cold War was entering its final freeze, and F-16 squadrons stood ready on alert strips across Germany and the United Kingdom. Their mission was to intercept Soviet bombers and fighters should the Red Army ever decide to cross the Iron Curtain. These pilots trained relentlessly in the gray skies of Northern Europe, practicing low-level flying and air combat maneuvers. The presence of hundreds of F-16s in NATO inventories served as a powerful deterrent, convincing the Soviet leadership that any air war over Europe would be costly and likely unwinnable. As the 1980s drew to a close, the Soviet Union collapsed, and the Cold War ended without the F-16 ever firing a shot in anger over Central Europe. However, the peace was short-lived. In August 1990, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, triggering a massive international response. The United States assembled a coalition of nations to liberate Kuwait, and the F-16 was deployed to the Middle East in numbers never seen before. Operation Desert Storm would become the largest combat test in the history of the Fighting Falcon. Hundreds of F-16s from the U.S. Air Force and coalition partners filled the airfields of Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states. They were tasked with the most dangerous mission of the war, attacking the heavily defended airfields and command centers in Baghdad. On the opening night of the war, waves of Vipers roared into the dark sky, laden with bombs and missiles. The pilots faced a dense network of surface-to-air missiles and anti-aircraft artillery that lit up the night like a deadly fireworks display. One of the most harrowing missions of the war involved a massive strike package of F-16s targeting the nuclear research facility in Baghdad. As the jets approached the target, they were painted by multiple radar systems, and missiles began to streak up from the city below. The pilots were forced to jettison their fuel tanks and maneuver violently to evade the incoming fire. The fly-by-wire system worked overtime, keeping the jets in the air as they pulled high G turns to dodge death by mere feet. It was a chaotic and terrifying ordeal that tested the limits of man and machine. Despite the intensity of the defenses, the F-16s proved remarkably resilient. They flew more sorties than any other aircraft type in the coalition, delivering thousands of tons of ordnance on Iraqi targets. They hunted Scud missile launchers in the western desert, bombed Republican Guard tank divisions, and enforced air superiority. The F-16 had transformed from the lightweight day fighter, envisioned by the Fighter Mafia, into an all-weather workhorse that could do it all. The sheer operational tempo maintained by the F-16 units was a testament to the reliability of the design. A new role emerged for the F-16 during Desert Storm, known as the Killer Scout. Fast-forward air controllers flew F-16s into designated kill boxes to identify targets for other aircraft. These pilots would loiter over enemy territory, spotting tanks and artillery, and then marking them with white phosphorus rockets or laser designators. This dangerous game of cat and mouse required the pilots to fly low and slow enough to see the ground but fast enough to survive. The F-16's versatility allowed it to adapt to this role, perfectly bridging the gap between reconnaissance and strike. After the Gulf War, the F-16 continued to patrol the skies over Iraq, enforcing the no-fly zones in Operation Southern Watch and Northern Watch. For over a decade, Vipers kept a lid on Saddam Hussein's Air Force, engaging radar sites and shooting down any aircraft that dared to violate the restrictions. This period of continuous combat operations drove the development of new upgrades, including better radar targeting pods and the integration of the AIM-120 AMRAAM missile. The F-16 was becoming smarter and more lethal with every passing year. The breakup of Yugoslavia in the 1990s brought war back to the European continent, and once again the F-16 was called upon to intervene. In operations over Bosnia and later Kosovo, F-16s flew thousands of missions to protect civilians and degrade the military capabilities of Serbian forces. It was in these conflicts that the F-16 fully demonstrated its precision strike capabilities, using laser-guided bombs to hit specific vehicles and bunkers while minimizing collateral damage. The ability to drop a bomb through a window from 20,000 feet had become a reality. During Operation Allied Force over Kosovo, an F-16 pilot achieved a rare feat by shooting down a MiG-29 Fulcrum, the most advanced Russian fighter of the time. The engagement took place at night, and the U.S. pilot used the advanced AMRAAM missile to destroy the enemy from beyond visual range. This victory underscored the dominance of American technology and training. The F-16 was no longer just a dogfighter, it was a sensor fusion platform that could see and kill enemies long before they knew they were in danger. The dawn of the 21st century brought a new kind of war following the attacks of September 11th. F-16s were immediately scrambled to patrol the skies over major American cities, flying combat air patrols to prevent further hijackings. For the first time in its history, the Viper was defending the homeland directly. Pilots flew long hours over New York and Washington, D.C., ready to make the ultimate decision to shoot down a civilian airliner if necessary. It was a somber mission that highlighted the changed world the F-16 now operated in. In the subsequent wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, the F-16 served primarily as a close air support platform. With air superiority guaranteed, the focus shifted to supporting troops on the ground. F-16s loitered high above the mountains of the Hindu Kush and the streets of Fallujah, waiting for calls for help from soldiers under fire. Using advanced targeting pods, pilots could zoom in to see individual insurgents and deliver precision weapons within meters of friendly forces. The roar of an F-16 overhead became a comforting sound to infantrymen pinned down by enemy fire. The evolution of the F-16 continued with the introduction of the Block 50 and Block 52 variants, which featured more powerful engines and advanced avionics. These aircraft were designed to carry the HARM missile, specialized for destroying enemy radar systems. The mission, known as Suppression of Enemy Air Defenses, or SEAD, became a specialty of the F-16. These wild weasel missions required pilots to fly directly into the teeth of enemy air defenses, baiting them to turn on their radars so they could be destroyed. It takes a special breed of pilot to fly as a target. Perhaps the most advanced versions of the F-16 were developed not for the U.S. Air Force, but for foreign customers. The F-16E and F-16F Desert Falcon, developed for the United Arab Emirates, featured conformal fuel tanks that gave the jet greater range and a unique aesthetic. These tanks bulged from the top of the fuselage, allowing the jet to carry more fuel without taking up weapon stations. This variant also included a cutting-edge active electronically scanned array radar, making it one of the most capable fourth-generation fighters in the world. The global footprint of the F-16 is unmatched by any other modern fighter. Over 4,500 units have been built, and they serve in the air forces of more than 25 nations. From the frozen fjords of Norway to the tropical islands of Indonesia, the F-16 is a ubiquitous symbol of air power. It has been adapted to carry local weapons and avionics, making each nation's fleet unique. The modular nature of the design has allowed it to stay relevant decades after its initial flight. Despite its age, the F-16 continues to receive updates that keep it competitive against newer threats. The latest F-16V Viper upgrade brings many of the technologies developed for the fifth-generation F-35 into the older airframe. This includes a new mission computer, a modern cockpit display, and an advanced data link that allows it to share information with other assets. These upgrades ensure that the F-16 will remain in service well into the 2030s and possibly beyond, flying alongside the stealth fighters that were meant to replace it. The longevity of the F-16 is a testament to the genius of the Fighter Mafia and the engineering team at General Dynamics. They created a platform that was fundamentally sound, aerodynamic, and adaptable. By prioritizing energy maneuverability and pilot ergonomics, they built a machine that pilots love to fly. It is a pilot's airplane, responsive and forgiving, yet capable of extreme violence when called upon. The connection between pilot and machine in an F-16 is said to be almost telepathic thanks to the sensitive side stick controller. However, the era of the F-16 is slowly drawing to a close as nations begin to transition to stealth technology. The F-35 Lightning II serves as the designated successor, designed to take over the multi-role duties of the Viper. While the F-35 offers stealth and sensor fusion that the F-16 cannot match, it lacks the raw kinematic agility and the low operating cost of its predecessor. The transition will be long, and for many years the two aircraft will fly wingtip to wingtip, covering each other's weaknesses. As we look back at the history of the F-16 Fighting Falcon, we see more than just a piece of military hardware. We see a reflection of the geopolitical shifts of the late 20th century. We see the triumph of a radical idea that challenged the establishment and won. We see the courage of pilots who flew into the most heavily defended airspace on Earth and returned home. The F-16 changed the way air wars are fought and set a standard for performance that few aircraft have ever matched. From the drawing boards of the Pentagon to the deserts of the Middle East, the journey of the F-16 has been one of constant evolution and dominance. It proved that a small, agile fighter could do the job of much larger aircraft and do it better. It democratized air power, allowing smaller nations to field a world-class air force. The silhouette of the F-16 with its single vertical stabilizer and underbelly intake is instantly recognizable to friends and foes alike. The legacy of the Fighting Falcon is written in the history books and etched into the memories of those who flew it and those who were protected by it. It is a machine that bridged the gap between the analog and digital ages of aviation. It survived the end of the Cold War and adapted to the complex asymmetric conflicts of the modern world. It is a survivor, a warrior, and a technological marvel that has earned its place in the pantheon of aviation legends. In the end, the story of the F-16 is the story of the pursuit of perfection in the sky. It is a reminder that sometimes the best solution is not the biggest or the most expensive, but the one that is purest in its design and purpose. As the sun sets on the career of this magnificent bird, it leaves behind a record of service that will likely never be surpassed. The F-16 Fighting Falcon truly dominated the skies, and its roar will echo through history for generations to come.